2nd of July 2023. On this video, I want to talk about fighting inflation and the general economic slump in Zimbabwe. We are seeing that the Reserve Bank is putting on a fight against the fast falling Zimbabwean dollar, but it seems like the measures are only temporary. The Zim dollar to the US dollar is now trading around 1 is to over 6,000. Okay, this is just a couple of months before the election. I don't see it stopping. I don't see the situation stopping because for me, it looks like a huge attack by the speculators. And there is different types of speculators. And I think what we really have to be cognizant of is food prices in Zimbabwe started to go up during the time when the president announced the date for elections. Now that's very significant. Even Idi Mnangagwa himself, he did speak about it that I announced the date for the elections and then food prices all of a sudden go up and the currency began to fall. And Mnangagwa believes that the speculators are attacking him because they want him out of power. I don't think so. That's not the reason why. The reason why is because this is how market forces operate. When they've got some level of certainty that something is certainly going to happen, they react. Before Mnangagwa announced the election dates, there was no certainty that we will have elections, meaning that without elections, it is government carries on. But when you announce election date, now the risk of ZANU-PF getting out of power increases because there is an election and the president has announced that election. Therefore, these speculators, remember, are acting in their individual capacity as I mean, as profit-seeking or profit maximizing individuals. So it's not about loving ED or hating ED. It's about speculation in the market for the sake of personal gain, or with this view that a possibility of a change of government may come in and people would rather not keep their money in Zimbabwe. These are the speculators that are selling Zim dollar currency and buying the US dollar currency for the purposes of externalizing the funds or keeping it in some US dollar denominated asset of some sort, one way or the other. This speculation or this fear of a possible government change, let me not say possible government change. Well, an uncertain political environment after the election. Okay, even if the government doesn't change, the fact that we're going to have election, one thing you can guarantee is uncertainty. One thing we can guarantee is election results are going to be contested, and the environment, whether it's political or financial or economic, is not conducive for business. And therefore, the market will read into that and begin uh, to fly their capital out of the country. So we have huge capital flights out of the country, including the capital of Zimbabweans themselves, including the capital of the very same gold mafia. The very same gold mafia in Zimbabwe would not risk its own capital in Zimbabwe during this time of uncertainty. So they would rather uh, flee the market. So that is what, in my view, is driving the 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 rapid deceleration of the Zimbabwean dollar. Should we have certainty after election, even if Idi Mnangagwa wins, maybe Nelson Chamisa challenges the results, and Nelson Chamisa's challenge dies down, it will give the market certainty that in the next 5 years or so we'll have Idi in power. Therefore, those fears are abated and the money might we might see a reversal in the Zimbabwean currency. Right now, what you are seeing is capital flight. And I don't think that the Reserve Bank's intervention can stop that kind of capital flight, because it is purely based mostly on the election season that we are going through. And it's very hard to stop that. Perhaps it's like trying to fight a collapsing dam hole. Maybe the best way to do is just to let the waters run out, and until it stops, until the election season is over. Now, how is this capital flight occurring? Uh, Perhaps Mthuli Ncube has got an opportunity in closing some gaps that I'm seeing. We know that when the Reserve Bank is fighting in the currency market, they were fighting what we call excess liquidity in the financial systems, right? So how they do that, they will call it mopping, or they, not me, they call it mopping excessive liquidity in the market. To mop is mean that there's a lot of Zimbabwean dollars in the system. So the Reserve Bank had to use their own US dollars to buy the Zimbabwean dollars, so that the value of the Zim dollar becomes higher. But in order for to do that, to defend that dollar continuously, they need to have an excess amount of US dollars to keep on buying the excess amount of Zim dollars that want to exit the Zim dollar market in favor of the US dollar market. Now, the amount of the Zim dollars that are willing to leave the country, we do not know how big that mountain is, and the mountain, or the value of US dollars that the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has is rather limited. And I do not know, but I'm sure John Makuja knows how much US dollars they have there. But I'm sure it's not a lot. Probably maybe this height. And the Zimbabweans that only want to leave the Zim dollar, that want that want to leave the exposure to the Zim dollar might be much higher. Okay, I'm not giving you any real figures. I'm not an economist, so I do not know. I don't have any data, but I can just see what's going on. And then you will see one of the sinister ways that is going to be very hard to, to fight this thing. Where the hard way is, I do not know. Let me put it this way. One of the ways in which it makes the situation hard is that is a creation of money in the market. Primarily, money is created by the RBZ, and then it lends to the government, and the government uses that money, and then it adds money into the system. We know about that, right? That has been leading to the dollar weakness over the years, but that weakness has been very slow. So the governments are printing of money via borrowing money, borrowing fresh currency from the Reserve Bank. Uh, has been well documented, but it's not leading to a hyperinflationary environment. So, what is leading to this high inflationary environment and the loss of our currency is this thing: private players who have got access to money creating facilities like banks and some money lenders, and things like EcoCash, which are able in a way to create money. You know, EcoCash can create money just like a bank, and banks can create money as well through fractional reserve system. Okay, I don't have time to explain that, but generally they can create money. So if you have got access to a bank, perhaps you are a bank executive, or you've got links to the bank, you can begin to borrow billions of Zimbabwean dollars. Okay, you can borrow those billions, take those billions Zimbabwean dollars, and go and buy US dollars and go park US dollar outside the country. Tomorrow you go again and borrow some more. So how much put the amount of money that can be created depends on the bank's ability to create fresh money. That will depend on the banks. There's a rate that they use. What is it called? I forgot the name. There's a certain percentage that banks are allowed to create fresh money. So if they reach the threshold, they can't go overboard unless it will be breaking the law. But in Zimbabwe, in a country where breaking banking laws is something that can happens anytime, depending on who you know in power, I would imagine that banks are actually breaking the law. See, I do not know. I'm saying that I'm imagining, like, knowing Zimbabweans and knowing the country how it's like. I am sure that what's the name of that bank rate? There is a bank rate, man. Ish, I hate my brain for forgetting things. Let me pause. Maybe I'll remember it. No, it's not coming. I'm trying to remember. It's not coming. But basically, what it is that, for example, if a bank has got $1,000 deposits, it may be allowed to lend out, let's say, 9,000. Okay, that will be of the money that it doesn't have. Okay, or maybe 10,000. Let's use the example of 10,000. The rate that I'm looking for, it means that if they've got 10% of deposit, or which means that, oh, this is actually very difficult stuff. It means that for every thousand, they can create credit for 10,000. All right. The reason why they are allowed to create money that way is so that they can make profit through borrowings. So when people pay back their money, there's a profit that the banks make. But then it so happens that in a case like this in Zimbabwe, these people that are borrowing from the bank, they're not taking money from the bank for the purpose of making profit somewhere. They just want to buy US dollars. And that kind of speculation is what is causing the Zim dollar to fall. All right. So as I'm saying, that knowing the crime rate in Zimbabwe, even if banks are allowed to make, for example, only 10,000 out of the $1,000 deposit, the Zimbabwean banks can even go to 15, 20, 30, 40, 50,000. Who's going to stop them? If Mtole friends, if Mtole Ngobe is your uncle or is your friend, or you're still together, or he's the one doing it. So you see, such kind of lax regulation system in our banking system is what causes also this dollar to fall. If John Mankoja was a guy who really was a proper police of the banking system, such things can be stopped. That rate, which I forgot the name. Unfortunately, I'm not an economist, so I don't have to know everything. If, for example, if a bank has got $1,000 deposit and they are only allowed to borrow $1,000, not more, okay, it will stop. It will limit severely the bank's abilities to create money. But at the moment, it seems like there is no ceiling as to how much money Zimbabwean banks can create. And because of that, it's the competition to the exit door. Everybody wants to exit the Zim dollar, and it's crashing. Owing to the fact that the political environment is unstable. So it's very hard to fix that, because the only way to fix it is actually politics is mele be right. But as long as the politics is right, there's nothing. There's no solution to this thing. Just have to watch it flow. All right. Another option that the Reserve Bank have is to raise interest rate, like raise them up to 4,000 or 5,000%. Okay. But then at the same time, be a good police, set stringent regulations to these banks. But again, the problem in Zimbabwe, these banksters in Zimbabwe are the gangsters. They would not police themselves. They're the ones who are doing the crime. The ones that are supposed to police the banks are the very same people doing the crime of creating excess liquidity into the market, and thereby increasing the demand for your US dollar, which causes the Zim currency to keep on falling precipitously. And there's nobody who's going to stop them, because they are the ones who are supposed to stop themselves. So I don't see themselves stopping themselves. So at the end of the day, the whole public suffers. It's a very clever way of confiscating uh, the wealth of the whole nation. So as a Zimbabwean, you don't have to do anything. You, nobody needs to break into your house or even break into a bank account. They just need to borrow billions of dollars from different financial institutions and just go buy US dollars, thereby causing the Zim dollar to plummet. So if you're a Zimbabwean with the Zim dollars under your bed, they lose value through that way. So you're saying, how do they steal the money? They steal the money from borrowing to each other. The chefs in Harare, those who've got access to the banking system. That is a tragedy. Okay. Because these guys, they do it because they've got access to banking. Number two, they're not doing it because they hate Mnangagwa. No, they're doing it because they don't trust the Zimbabwean system. They don't trust Mnangagwa. Even Mnangagwa's financial advisors are also involved in doing the same thing, because that would be the right financial advice to do, as far as the market is concerned. Because remember, the market participants are not nationalistic. They've got individual motives of profit maximization, and everyone else is rushing for the door, exiting the Zim market because of political uncertainty. And I'm saying, I do not know what solution except for political stability. Without political stability, the country is going to carry on bleeding. So I expect this bleeding to carry on until the elections, and actually on the day of elections, when elections happen, the Zim dollar is going to lose even much more, because the reality now, the risk of election is low. Okay, it's high, but not that high. But when the elections actually come, now we really do know that, yeah, stuff is going down. There is real election. Even on the eve of the announcement of the results, it's just going to be a catastrophe on the Zimbabwean market, until until a day comes when there's political stability. Then you're going to see all that capital coming back into the country, which which leads me to another important thing of to note, that in Zimbabwe we do not have a shortage of money in our economy. Yes, our economy does not have a shortage of money. It's got a shortage of sense, political willingness to create an environment where there can be investment. There is enough money. Even there's no people who stole money, they've got billions that they can invest in Zimbabwe, that they probably are willing to invest in Zimbabwe. But then their own laws, the very same lawmakers, their own laws prohibit them from investing the money in Zimbabwe. The fact that we are seeing a lot of Zim dollar currency buying US dollars shows that there's a lot of money in the country, but that money doesn't want to stay in the country, meaning that there's something wrong in the country. That's why it's want to get out of the country. So it's based on speculative. So this creation of excess money now also causes inflation. Now let me explain to you the inflation aspect of it. I have just spoke about how the Zim dollar loses its value because they create a lot of money in the system. That loss of Zim dollar chases US dollars, causing the value of a US dollar against the Zimbabwean dollar to be more and more expensive. That is currency depreciation. Now let's talk of the prices. Okay? Where is the inflation coming in? Because these banks, or these financial institutions, because of their ability to create money, to bring up liquidity into the system, we've got the situation of a lot of money chasing fewer goods, meaning the prices of goods become higher. That is inflation. But then you would think that in a healthy economy, when there's a lot of money that is created, therefore there shall be productivity, because productivity is what it causes inflation not to not to be high. Okay, if you increase money supply and increase productivity, generally you don't experience much inflation, sometimes even nothing at all, because the number of goods that are being chased has also been increased. But there's a problem is, why don't we have productivity in Zimbabwe? It's because of the government policies and ZANU-PF. Okay, what ZANU-PF does, nobody, even ZANU-PF people, do not want to invest in an environment where ZANU-PF is leading. You know what I'm saying? ZANU-PF itself, the people who have got money in ZANU-PF, do not want to invest in an environment where ZANU-PF leads, because ZANU-PF does not create positive environment for businesses to be productive. So all of that money that is brought into the system is not going to productivity. Do you know where it's going to? It's going to the stock market. So you are going to see, that's why you see price inflation reflect being reflected in the stock market. The Zimbabwe stock market is one of the stellar performing markets across the whole world. Do you know why? Because the excess liquidity that is in the country, if it doesn't find its way into into a currency hedge by buying the US dollar, it finds itself in the stock market, which is more like of an inflation hedge. So the rise of the Zimbabwean uh, stock market is not an indication of a good performance of the economy of Zimbabwe, but rather it just shows you where the excess liquidity is rushing to. So as excess money chasing fewer financial assets in the stock market causes an inflation, a huge inflation in the stock market. So our stock market is not experiencing a boom economically, meaning our other businesses in the stock market are not experiencing a boom in their profiteering, but rather it's a price inflation in those markets driven by excess liquidity that cannot find a base in the broader economy, but rather can find a base in the assets in the assets of the stock market, or in the currency markets, and also in the housing market. It's surprising that high houses in Zimbabwe have been really house home prices have been increasing. Do you know why? Because of this excess liquidity that is buying these assets that are viewed as a sort of like safer havens. Nobody in Zimbabwe takes his money and opens a company that does what? Let's say that makes fridges, or that makes television, or that makes whatever, because that company is going to struggle to survive if they don't have connections with ZANU PF, or they don't appease political opponents, blah blah blah. So it becomes better for people not to invest in those kind of risky adventures in a normal country. That's not supposed to be a risk. That's supposed to be the right thing to do to create employment. So, but then our government is not interested in creating employment. Well, another interesting thing about the employment is that when we have got excess money in the market, right, chasing fewer goods, I say that it's now led to an inflation in the stock market. But something interesting about the labor market is this thing. The labor market has got excess amount of people, okay, that are looking for jobs, and the jobs are a few. There are fewer jobs. So the fact that money is not finding itself to the productive sector of the economy has taken us to a place where uh, instead of a labor shortage, we've got excess labor, thereby driving down the price of labor. All right. There isn't excess money chasing labor. If we are in an environment where the government allows productivity to carry on unhindered, there will be a lot of factories being built in Zimbabwe, and a lot of jobs and a lot of job openings which would lead to lots of money chasing fewer people who need jobs, and thereby experiencing a labor inflation. But what we have in Zimbabwe is a labor deflation, which is the opposite. That excess money isn't going to productive purposes, yet we have got a lot of people that are looking for jobs. That is why you see that the wage in Zimbabwe is severely depressed. It is because of the depression of financial resources into the productive sector. It is the productive sector that employs people. You see, when that money is deployed into the stock market, it does not do anything to increase wages, because the stock market does not create employment. Okay, the stock market is just a gambling place. There is no employment that is created from there. But however, if the money is invested in building factories, build one huge factory, employ 5,000 people, build another huge factory, employ 10,000 people, you see that creates employment, and because of that demand for labor prices begin to go up. Now, with the opposite is happening in Zimbabwe, that's what I'm saying. That is why labor prices are falling. That is why people get paid $100 a month, because of too much labor chasing fewer jobs. We need to get to a place where our politics is stable, all right, and our politics serves the interests of the productive sector, and with policies that create an environment where productivity can take place unhindered, and we will have all of this excess liquidity that the Zimbabweans have. I don't think that we need direct foreign investment. I think that we've got enough direct investment. We've got enough of our own local investment that is ready to be diverted into the productive sector. And if we do that, then you will see the average wages rise and normalize in Zimbabwe. Rather, we will see them normalize, not just rise. $100 a month is what normal. In South Africa, it's around $300 a month, which is also low. But 100 is abnormal. 300 a month or 400 a month, that would be the normalization. Perhaps, I mean, I will suggest that I would envision wages going to 4, 500, 600, 700 as the productive sector is opened up, and also foreign capital gets to be attracted to Zimbabwe if we are under a government that actually is interested in building the productive sector. My name is Ngobani Zondo. Have a good evening. I am running to lead Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.